Now I'm just waiting for it to tell me that that's the case. Okay, so now you'll see at the top that blue bar that says the meeting is being recorded. And as a reminder for any members of the public calling in, the advisory boards and commissions and committees meetings are posted to the city's YouTube channel. So you can view anything afterwards as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Markella to read the script to get us off and running. And then let's see. And yeah, and then I think roll call comes after that. Thanks.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Good evening. My name is Markella, and I am the co-chair of the Upper Harbor Terminal CPC. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D .021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Thank you. Melissa Newman. Markella Smith.
Present.
Mary Gemma McGuire. I'll swing back to Mary. Britt Howell. Grace Rood.
Present.
Janessa Green. Janessa.
Aye.
Present? Okay, thanks. And I had mentioned that Shan is not able to join us. Makeda.
Present.
Jason.
Present.
Miss Vanessa.
Present.
Alexis Penny.
Present.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I haven't been consistent with saying full names. I am a little out of practice. Apologies for that. Bill English. Courtney Schroeder.
Present.
I'm going to go back up to Mary to see if she's able. Let me see her number here. Okay, I see her number on the list, so she's still on. So it must be an issue with the mute. So I'll text her really quick. Sorry about that. Since we know she's on and I can get her off mute, I think we can go ahead and move on. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. With that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. All right, so next up, we just have an approval of the agenda. So if I can get a motion in a second, we can go ahead and approve the agenda for today.
So moved. It's Courtney.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney.
Second.
Awesome. If we can get a roll on that.
Yes, we can. Melissa Newman. Markella Smith.
Aye.
Mary Gemma McGuire. Hey, Tanessa, sorry to call you out and sorry to interrupt your invite roll call. Can you remind us what the button to unmute is. Mary was having
I
issues.
think I'm on. Am I on?
Oh, Mary, hello, hi.
Hi. Yeah, I'm here and I'm in agreement.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that, everybody. Moving on to Britt Howell. Grace Rude,
Aye.
Tanessa Green,
Aye.
Makeda Zulu Gillespie,
Aye.
Jason Eisen,
Aye.
Vanessa Willis,
Aye.
Alexis Penny,
Aye.
Bill English, Courtney Schroeder.
Aye.
Thank you. That was 9 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions, so that agenda is adopted.
My bad. Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we have the acceptance of the minutes from January 27th. I am trusting that everyone looked over those minutes. Are there any objections, any changes that need to be made? If not, I will just need a motion and a second to approve the minutes as is.
So moved.
This is Grace, seconded.
Thank you. If we can get roll on that, that would be great.
Yes, roll call, Melissa Newman, Markella Smith,
Aye.
Mary Gemma McGuire, Mary.
Aye.
Thank you. Britt Howell, Grace Rude,
Aye.
Tanessa Green,
Aye.
Makeda Zulu Gillespie,
Aye.
Jason Eisen,
Aye.
Vanessa Willis,
Aye.
Alexis Penny,
Aye.
Bill English, Courtney Schroeder.
Aye.
That is 9 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. The January 27th minutes are accepted.
Awesome. Thank you. Just pointing out that we are like 11 minutes behind. So I know we're waiting on everyone to join. So just putting that out there so that we can stay on track. Up next, we have a presentation on the draft UHT AUAR from Hillary Dvorak from the city of Minneapolis. And again, that should have been with your packet. And she's putting it up on the screen. So thank you.
Good evening. Can you all see the presentation?
I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Thank you. I'm Hillary Dvorak. I'm in the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development. I'm a principal planner in the Land Use Design and Preservation section, and I am the staff contact for environmental reviews for the city of Minneapolis. This presentation is going to focus on the alternative urban area-wide review that is in process for the Upper Harbor Terminal project. Tonight, the agenda for this presentation is going to go over the project background, why we are doing an AUAR, what was studied in it, and how you can comment on it. And the purpose of this presentation is to provide information about the AUAR process and project schedule, and an opportunity for you to provide comments on the draft AUAR and mitigation plan. As I said, I'm Hillary Dvorak, and we have other individuals or other members of the city and the development team here to answer questions that may arise as after the conclusion of this presentation. We have Alexander Cato. He's a transportation planner in the Minneapolis Public Works Department. Kate Lamers from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, Brandon Champeau and Tom Strom from United Properties, and then Dana Frank with First Avenue. So what is an AUAR? The AUAR process is a hybrid of the environmental assessment worksheet and environmental impact statement review processes. The AUAR document uses a list of questions adapted from the EAW form, but provides a level of analysis of typical urban area impacts comparable to an EIS. The purpose of an AUAR is to analyze cumulative impacts of anticipated development scenarios within a given geographic area. It also informs local planning and zoning decisions based on environmental analysis. I do want to point out that an AUAR does not approve or deny a project. So why are we doing an AUAR? The state of Minnesota requires environmental reviews on proposed developments of a certain size and scale. The development proposed in the draft Upper Harbor Terminal Coordinated Development Plan meets the requirements to complete an AUAR, which is a planning tool to understand how different development scenarios will affect the environment of their community before the development occurs. The proposed development scenarios that were studied, there were three. There was a no build, and then scenario 1 and scenario 2. Specifically for scenarios 1 and 2, they both exceed the minimum EAW thresholds. However, they do not meet the EIS thresholds. And because there is no specific design for each site, the AUAR is an appropriate form of environmental review for this project. United Properties, in partnership with First Avenue Productions, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and the City of Minneapolis, is proposing to redevelop the 53-acre Upper Harbor Terminal site, which is highlighted on the map on the screen before you. A proposed 19.5-acre park is included in scenarios 1 and 2 and includes shared use paths or separated bikeways and pedestrian circulation. Both development scenarios will be built out in 2 phases. And you can see the different phases on the map as they are color-coded for you. So what we studied in the AUAR were 3 different scenarios. There is a no-build scenario, and then the scenario that reflects the draft coordinated development plan, and then the maximum density allowed under the comprehensive plan. And you can see from the chart that there are different scales of development, dwelling units, commercial square footage, etc., that are reflected in each scenario. 2 aspects remain constant between the scenarios, however, which is the park and the music venue. For the no-build scenario, nothing would change. No mitigation would be required for the scenario because nothing would change. The site would remain as is. This is the development plan that is included in the draft coordinated development plan, and that was developed in conjunction with the Collaborative Planning Committee. So this should be very familiar to all of you. And scenario 2 reflects the maximum density allowed under the comprehensive plan. This represents the upper limits of what could be built on the site per the 2040 comprehensive plan. There are many topics studied in an AUAR, and the bulleted list goes through those topics that are studied. One thing that is specific and unique to one thing that is specific to an AUAR is the mitigation plan. The draft and final AUAR documents must include an explicit mitigation plan, and this plan is based on the findings of potential impacts and the resources studied in the AUAR and is a commitment by the RGU to prevent potentially significant impacts from occurring. An RGU is a responsible governmental unit, and in this case, it is the City of Minneapolis. The next several slides, we're going to go through the different topic areas that are covered in the AUAR. I'm going to go through the identified potential impacts and then the identified mitigation strategies for each topic area. And this is a high-level review of each topic area, and there's tons of information included in the AUAR. So I hope you've read, or I encourage you to read through the document, because there's a lot of background that goes into how we came up to or concluded with these impacts and mitigation strategies. So the first topic area that we're going to discuss is land use. I'm going to go through the impacts and then I'll list the strategies that we've identified. So for the potential impacts for land use, scenarios 1 and 2 propose land uses that are inconsistent with current zoning. The proposed outdoor amphitheater as part of the Community Performing Arts Center on Parcel 3 is not currently a recognized use in the Minneapolis zoning code. And scenarios 1 and 2 propose building heights over what is allowed under the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area, or the MRCA, and Shoreland Overlay District. The mitigation strategies that we have identified for land use, all parcels would require a zoning change. Zoning code text amendment to allow the outdoor amphitheater would be required. A comprehensive plan amendment to align the proposed parcels with the future land use plan would be required, and also to allow additional building height. And that is specific to parcel 7, where the Collaborative Planning Committee recommended a 15-story building on that site. And the last mitigation strategy, a conditional use permit and height premiums to allow additional building height would be required. Conditional use permits and height premiums would come into play as each development site goes through land use and zoning for entitlement purposes. The next topic area then is geology and soils, and the potential impacts that have been identified are grading activities are anticipated to begin in late 2022 or early 2023. And the mitigation strategies identified are acquiring a national pollutant discharge elimination system, general stormwater permit for construction activity from the MPCA prior to initiating earthwork, and temporary erosion and sediment control measures will be implemented during construction. The next topic area is water resources, and that is broken down into 3 subsections. The first is surface water, which is, and the potential impact identified is upland shoreline grading along the Mississippi River is proposed within the park area for restoration. And then there's stormwater, and stormwater management would be required for all new development. And then there's the wastewater and water supply. Existing footings, foundation, and utilities may encounter some groundwater and would require dewatering during construction. And water-related infrastructure will need to be extended and or reconstructed to accommodate development. The mitigation strategies for those potential impacts include under surface water, regrading the shoreline would require permitting with Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. For stormwater, stormwater infrastructure would comply with City of Minneapolis Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54, and individual and district system stormwater management approaches are being considered. And then for wastewater and water supply, a permit will be required from the Metropolitan Council for a sanitary sewer extension and permit to connect. A permit will be required from the Minnesota Department of Health for water main installation, and a temporary water appropriations general permit for construction dewatering will be required from the DNR. For contamination and hazardous waste, the impacts identified include demolition debris and earth materials will be generated during demolition of the existing structures within the AUAR study area. Construction of either development scenario would generate construction-related waste materials such as wood, packaging, excess materials, and other wastes. And scenarios 1 and 2 would generate new demands on solid waste management and sanitation services provided in the project area. The mitigation strategies include ensuring compliance with applicable laws, rules, and ordinances related to the management of solid and hazardous waste as required by Minnesota statute, coordination with the MPCA regarding the required plans, material handling, and disposal, notice of intent to demolition for removal of buildings, and a construction contingency plan and response action plan for the MPCA approval will be needed to document plans for handling unknown material during construction. Under fish and wildlife and plant communities, the potential impacts identified are The AUR study area provides limited and low-quality native vegetation habitat. Wildlife that can be found within the study area include birds, small mammals that have adapted to the highly disturbed urban environment. And there are no records of state-listed, threatened, endangered, and special concern species within the AUAR study area. However, black sandshell mussel, the rusty patched bumblebee, peregrine falcons, and a great blue heron nesting site are found within 1 mile of the study area. The mitigation strategies for these potential impacts are that the DNR concurred that negative impacts to known occurrences of rare features are not anticipated. The Audubon Minnesota Bird Safe Building Guidelines will be used to develop strategies to avoid and minimize impacts to migrating birds to the extent practical. Wildlife-friendly erosion control methods will be used within the study area to minimize impacts to land and aquatic wildlife using the site during construction. Native plantings and vegetation restoration will be used to promote pollinator habitat and wildlife habitat. And shoreline restoration on the site may improve ecological functions and remove invasive species. For historic properties, the potential impacts are that the State Historic Preservation Office concurred that the Upper Harbor Terminal site is not considered individually eligible for National Register of Historic Places, but is considered contributing to a larger potential historic district. The Upper Harbor Terminal site has been identified as potentially eligible as a local City of Minneapolis historic district. And the mitigation strategies include consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, under Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act of 1966 when acquiring federal funds, permits, or authorizations in a federal undertaking. Evaluate options for adaptive reuse, preservation, removal, redevelopment, interim stabilization measures for existing buildings or structures. Explore interpretive planning that allows for phased implementation and balances the significance of the site through time and across cultures. In combination of soil cores, ground penetrating radar, and shovel testing is needed to identify whether historical structures remain beneath the surface. For visual, scenarios 1 and 2 would include restoration of natural vegetation, structural tiering, and preservation of public views. And the proposed community performing arts center will include outdoor lighting to be used during shows. The mitigation strategies for this topic are that all lighting will be subject to the MERCA plan requirements. The use of outdoor lighting for the community performing arts center is subject to a conditional use permit, which would come in at the time of land use entitlement process. And lighting and visual impacts are regulated through the City of Minneapolis's development review, site planning, and permitting process. For noise, scenarios 1 and 2 include residential buildings and planned green space that are considered sensitive noise receptors. Scenarios 1 and 2 include a community performing arts center on parcel 3, which will result in elevated noise levels during major events. The mitigation strategies for this topic are construction activities will be conducted to minimize noise levels in nighttime construction activities, and permits related to construction noise will be obtained from the city if needed. An outdoor noise permit will be required before operating the community performing arts center for events. An installation of appropriate noise attenuation features in residential buildings and the community performing arts center would be required. And these features could be integrated into the site or the buildings themselves. I'm going to pause for 1 second and ask if Alexander's on the call.
Yeah, Hillary, I'm here.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to let you take over.
Great. Hey everyone, Alexander from the City of Minneapolis, transportation planner. So yeah, obviously with the AUR, there's a big transportation component. Obviously there's a lot of questions, curiosity, concern around transportation impacts, and then just what level of accessibility will be available upon the site. And there's really, 2 ways to look at this. With the no build, we would do nothing. With the current build, we're estimating that it would generate less than 6,000 trips per day and less than 15,000 vehicles at Bellevue and Washington. Hillary, can you go to the next slide, please? With that level of traffic generation, these are the requirements that the AUAR would have. So for each development, there would be a TDMP. That's a pretty standard process that the city does for any new development anywhere in the city, where the developer submits their plan and how they'll mitigate traffic anticipated for each phase and assesses access points and things like that. So we'd be requiring that. Also with the Performance Arts Center, we would be developing a event transportation management plan, which we'll talk a little bit more on the next slide. A few other traffic related improvements. We are constructing, we're reconstructing Dowling, adding in westbound turn lanes for the northbound, westbound, and eastbound approaches at Dowling and Washington. Obviously, we're improving multimodal access with the shared use path that travels from Dowling and Lindale all the way into the site. Next slide, please, Hillary. And then with the, if we did the full build, which is what would be allowed under the 2040 comprehensive plan, we would require even more traffic improvements to the extent that we would have to either widen the bridge or move those bike and ped facilities to an additional separate bike ped bridge. But that's quite a bit far off. And if we reach that level of development, there'll be a lot more exploration on additional mitigation measures. Next slide, please. So this is the event transportation management framework. This would be for the Performing Arts Center that First Avenue is working with the city as well as a transportation consulting firm to flesh out. I would say this is a little early. Most of our larger event centers in the city, such as US Bank Stadium, TCF Bank Stadium, Target Field, typically the event management plan comes after the finalized plans for construction have been submitted. But there's been a lot of feedback from community and other stakeholders that have kind of accelerated the development of this. So this is a framework that we're looking at. It is not finalized, but it shows a lot of the potential mitigation measures that could be implemented to ensure that when the Performing Arts Center is hosting events, that the traffic system is operating well and is not causing a lot of problems and headaches to other users, to other folks using our network. So some of those examples include having a shuttle service that would transport individuals to the event, having a TNC staging area for those Ubers and Lyfts and other on-demand services such as taxis. Also monitoring traffic impacts to adjacent streets and providing mitigation measures around that. There's a lot of pieces on it. And that's it for me on the transportation piece.
Thank you, Alexander. So next steps. So this chart shows you where we've been and then next steps in the schedule. So in February, the City of Minneapolis published the draft AUAR order and the scoping EAW. That step in this process, we were reaching out to ensure that we were asking the question, are we studying the right things, or is there anything else that we should study? We received comment, we replied to that comment, and we brought that draft AUAR order and the scoping EAW to the City Council, and they approved it. And what they approved are the 3 scenarios that are studied in the document that is before you. Or I should say maybe not before you, but that was sent to you as part of this agenda. In February and March, that was the public comment on the draft AUAR order and scoping. I'm sorry, I guess I just said everything on the first line. I apologize. So let's go to the bottom line, where we're at. Right now, we published the draft AUAR and mitigation plan on May 25th. It was sent out. It was published in the EQB, the Environmental Quality Board Monitor, which is a publication of the EQB, and was sent to those that commented on the scoping order for the AUAR. The public comment period for this document runs through June 24th. After that, the city of Minneapolis will publish the final AUAR. And then the city council will need to approve the final AUAR. And then construction is anticipated to start in 2022 or 2023. So how can you comment on the AUAR? All comments need to come in writing. We collect all of the comments during the public comment period, and then we reply to all of those comments in writing and package it into a document that accompanies the final AUAR and mitigation plan. You would send comments directly to me, and we've listed some resources here. The Upper Harbor Minneapolis, or the Upper Harbor Terminal webpage, and then the city's environmental review webpage. They both contain information on the AUAR, contain links to all of the documents. So we wanted to give a little bit of information on commenting on an AUAR, because this is a different process for many. The city is required to evaluate and respond to substantive comments on the AUAR. These comments address the content or issues raised in the AUAR, such as the accuracy and completeness of the information, potential impacts that warrant further analysis, further information that may be required in order to secure permits for specific projects in the future, and mitigation measures or procedures necessary to prevent significant environmental impacts within the area when actual development occurs. There is a citizen's guide, or there's a guide that the EQB has made available. It's on their website, and we have a link for you in this presentation. And it's commenting on environmental review projects. So it walks one through, what these documents are and what kind of comments you would want to submit. I'm sorry. I think it's starting to actually rain right now, which is a good thing. That or my windows are breaking. Sorry. So here's my contact information. Again, to comment, you need to send comments in writing. You can send emails or letters. And then this is my contact information for all of you. And that concludes our presentation. So I will stop presenting right now, and we are here for questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Hillary.
You're welcome.
All right. Do we have any questions? Can anyone raise their hand or put in the comments if they want to comment? Mary has her hand up. Go ahead, Mary. Nope. You're still muted. There you go.
Yes. Okay. I have a couple questions. You talked about cumulative effect of everything, I assume, and the first question I have is about noise. And I've been asking for a while and haven't gotten a clear answer. How much noise will the neighborhood across the river, Marshall Terrace, hear from this venue? And we already have quite a bit of noise from industry and traffic. And I want to know if there's going to be any additional noise, and if so, how much?
Okay. Within the AUAR, one of the appendices to the document is a noise study that was done for the venue itself, based on the noise allowances in the Minneapolis Code. And what it shows is that there will be no additional noise generated above the levels that currently exist due to the freeway noise. So a background noise study was done, and then they added in the level, they added in the venue noise that would be generated, and it was found that the additional noise is not above those limits.
Okay, but you're talking about the west side of the river where the highway is. I'm talking about the east side of the river. I haven't seen any studies about the east side of the river.
The noise analysis has graphics in it that do show there are noise receptors. There were noise receptors on both sides of the river. And then also near the Heron, the word is escaping me right now. Thank you. And the noise study concluded that there would be no impacts from the venue.
No
that.
negative impact, right? But I want to know if there's going to be any noise additional on this side of the river. How do I get that answer?
I'm gonna ask if anyone from the development team wants to jump in.
Yeah, hey, this is Dana. So the noise study is public, and it did, again, like as Hillary said, there is a map so you can see everywhere that they studied. And what they found is that it's not above street level.
Okay, that's not my question. I live on Marshall Street. It's extremely noisy. My house shakes when the trucks go by. So what I want to know as a citizen, I'm not a noise expert. What kind of noise am I going to hear from the venue, especially concerned about bass noise and vibrations? Will there be any additional noise from this venue in this area? And that, I don't understand the noise study. I'm not a technician.
So what the noise study said is that there will be no additional impact. That's what the modeling and that's what the studies came back with. There will be no additional noise. There will be no additional impact above the current noise limits.
That's my concern. If we add more of the same noise, it's going to be unbearable.
But the question was just answered. She said there's no additional impact.
Beyond the current noise levels. That's not clear because the current noise levels are very high. So if we're going to add more of the current noise levels, it's going to be double.
Well, that's not the way noise levels are reported or impacted. So, there's like a dB limit. So the current street level dB limits, and I'm not entirely, but it's, X amount, it's like 65 or something during the day and then more at night. And so, or less at night, sorry. So what this noise studies reported was the decibel limits will not exceed the current limits that the city of Minneapolis have at any hour.
So again, I'm going to have the highest level I have now all the time till 10 o'clock at night. I'm not getting a clear answer. Live here. How much am I going to hear, if any?
So there will not be any higher decibel limits than what you're hearing right now.
But I will hear music, is what you're saying.
So again, this is the noise study that's based on like how the wind and every kind of like modeling expertise that they have, and it will not exceed the city of Minneapolis street level decibel limits. That's
right.
what the noise study reported.
Concern. So if the music is the same level as the traffic, it's going to be a lot. I need to know how much music
combined.
What?
I think what they're saying is that combined, it's not going to be higher. So it's not going to be traffic noise plus music venue noise. It's just like combined, it's not going to be any louder than it already is.
Well, if that's true, I'm not going to hear any music. And I haven't heard anybody say I'm not going to hear any music.
Well, we don't know what you're currently hearing, right? So there's a little bit of I think maybe that's a little bit of the confusion of like, I don't know what you're hearing, but
I'm hearing a lot of noise. I'm hearing a lot of noise.
The decibel limits will not exceed current street level. So if you're hearing traffic or you're hearing music or whatever it is, the decibel limits, which is how you measure noise, it won't exceed the current noise ordinance limits.
Okay, then I'm very concerned about the noise level coming from this venue in our neighborhood. It's going to be loud and it's going to be annoying and it's going to be constant. We have very little traffic on the weekend. Now we're going to have music on the weekend.
Okay, what I will say is there's also an open house tomorrow, which may give you some more background information as far as the AUAR goes too.
I don't need background. I need a specific answer about how much music we're going to hear in this neighborhood. I don't want to hear about traffic. I want to hear how much music
Hello,
I'm
may
going
I
to
ask a
this
question
neighborhood. What?
on this subject? May I respond to this subject?
I don't know who that is.
It's Erica Slager de Santos, and I do sound and lighting in music venues for 30 years. I have a question pertaining to decibel level.
Hi, this is Hillary Holmes. I'm the staff to the committee. We don't have public comment on the agenda tonight. If you have a question, you can attend, and there is a Q&A at the online open house that the city's hosting tomorrow night. And so if you would like to, there's information on the city's website and on the project website about that event. And we could address questions from the public through that public forum. Thank you.
Okay, so I can ask a question tomorrow regarding the sound engineer capacity to raise the decibels per the sound system in the venue that comes in with the touring company. That's a place I can ask that question.
I think that's fine.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Yes,
you.
of course. Thanks, Erica.
And then we can also follow up on that. But isn't Psycho Susie's in Northeast? You guys don't hear any sound from there?
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought that up because when they first moved in, it wasn't Psycho Susie's, but Betty Danger's was horrendous. The houses were shaking. We couldn't even go to sleep. It was terrible. And we had to work with them for months to get them to change their sound system, change the direction of the bands, etc. So now it's reasonable. But it was horrendous when they first moved in.
So Mary, what I can say is that I don't think it's accurate to say that, I mean, I think it's accurate to say that you are going to hear music coming from the venue, but the sound levels that will come from the music venue are within the limits that the city allows. And so they are not, the study that was done concluded that the sound levels that will be generated by the venue will not exceed the sound limitations of the city.
So how much music are we going to hear?
I don't think they have a concrete answer to that until it's built.
Well, they need to figure that out.
Okay.
This is a sound study.
Go to the next
Point of
question.
order, point of order, Chair.
Yep, we're moving on.
All right.
Thank you, unless you want to make a comment.
No,
Well,
ma'am,
Oh,
we
where
just
I'm
been
going to get my
repeating the
answer.
same
Who
thing
can I talk to?
for the
Okay,
last 3
yep,
minutes.
I
Hey,
agree.
this is Hillary Holmes. Say, Mary, we'll follow up. Okay, I think we just need some more time to address this question. And so we will follow up. But yeah, Markella's right. There's a couple people in line. So I think we'll maybe just keep it moving for questions. Thank you.
Yep, and we've said the same thing a couple of
Hello,
times.
my name is Tammy Skinaway. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're not in line to speak up at the moment. There are people ahead of you.
Okay, if you could tell me when I can, I'll ask the question. Thank you very much.
Hi,
There-
Tammy. This is Hillary
Hi.
Holmes. I'm staff to the Upper Harbor Terminal Collaborative Planning Committee. And we just have the agenda as committee business tonight. So the committee members will be asking questions. And they have not, we haven't included public comment time on the agenda. There's a open house on the AUAR tomorrow that the city's hosting online. And there's information on the project website about that event and also on the city's event calendar and the city's website. I can provide that more information on that if needed. The project website is upperharbormpls.com. And there's an event calendar on that page as well as environmental review. Sorry, thank you.
All right, Alexis, you up next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that, Madam Co-Chair. I just wanted to talk briefly about what was stated about the current conditions. It was stated that with the current conditions, there wouldn't need to be anything done, but it doesn't take into consideration the fact that there's a lot of pollution that's been taking place on this area for a long time already. And the air quality, the soil quality, and the water quality probably are really bad right now. So probably we could use some mitigation despite whatever happens on the site, even if there is no project that moves forward. In addition to that, the land use and the height mitigation strategies you're putting forward are simply just like, you're saying that you want to do zoning and permit code, what's the word I'm looking for? Conditional use permits, for example. And it's like, how does that really address the fact that there might be some detrimental outcomes from building heights this high and exceeding the current codes that we have, instead of just trying to push the codes higher? And then lastly, there was some concerns from community members about the deadline being only to June 24th of this month and not giving enough time for people to actually weigh in on what's happening environmentally at this site and for the future health of our residents. And so I would ask formally of Councilmember Philip Cunningham to extend the deadline for this comment period beyond June 24th. I think he needs to hear from residents, and if he doesn't want to, that's all right. Election's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Is there anyone that wants to address Alexis's questions?
Alexis, can you state your first question again? I'm sorry, you had several in there and I didn't get them all written down.
The first one has to do with cumulative impacts and cumulative effects, and the fact that even if we didn't do anything with this site, the conditions of the current area are poor in terms of air quality, water quality, and soil quality. So the assumption that we don't need to do anything if this project doesn't move forward is insane.
Well, the city, I mean, if nothing happened, if the city maintained ownership of this site and used it as a place for outdoor storage, we wouldn't be making any improvements to the site. And so you're correct. Nothing would be improved under the no build scenario, because no development would be occurring that would mandate any changes.
Right. I would like to hear from Councilmember Cunningham.
I don't believe he's on this call, but.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Alexis, can you please state the question again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
I would like to formally request that you extend the comment period deadline beyond June 24th to give more time to hear from residents and their concerns about our future at this site and our future health.
Sure, I mean, I'm open to discussing that further, sure.
What I'd like for you is to provide a commitment over this meeting today.
I'm not going to do that, but
okay, that's fine. You don't need to. I just wanted to hear you say it.
It doesn't mean no, Alexis. It's not a fair setup, but I am willing to consider it. I just have to be able to get some more background information first.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Councilman. Can we answer the question about height? I believe that was next. Sorry, Alexis, I'm paraphrasing because you did have a lot of questions in there.
So I think you had asked about the conditional use permit for height. Was that the specific question, Alexis?
Had to do with land use and heights, and the fact that your mitigation strategies are just proposing that we use new zoning laws and conditional use permits to get around this, when it doesn't actually address the fact that we could be causing detriment by building higher buildings than are currently allowed at this site, and the fact that we're just basically skirting around the current issues to get us to a preferred building I can't think of the word, but a preferred building stature, if you will.
Well, the conditional, I mean, given the Mississippi River overlay shoreland, impacts that limit height to go above the 2.5 stories, the conditional use permit is required, and that's a land use application that would be processed before the Planning Commission. So that application, I mean, that is we're identifying the tool that would be needed to exceed the height. Again, an AUAR approval does not approve the whole project. Every site needs to go through land use review after that. And so there's no guarantee that a conditional use permit would be approved. but they can ask for them. So the strategy is, the mitigation would be to exceed the height limitations, you need a conditional use permit. So we're not saying that we're not approving conditional use permits through this process. We're just identifying what would be needed to get to that height that's shown in the coordinated plan or in the 2040 scenario.
Right.
But isn't that the only reason, isn't that the only way that you're gonna get more affordable housing?
We're not, yes, that is, but we're not doing public comment, so thank you, Roxanne. Melissa, I'm gonna go ahead and call on you next.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Sorry I was tardy for the party, but I'm here now. Just a couple of comments. I was kind of going to touch on kind of what Roxanne was bringing up just a minute ago regarding the height, but because that was the idea of the zoning and for us requesting of it to expand, to allow for additional units and allow for some of those particular units to be able to be marketplace so they can have more units that are actable for affordable housing. And it was only one building, and that was the one that was closest to Dowling and along the freeway. So we need to keep that in mind too, because if you are minimizing it and you're limiting it, then you're also limiting the opportunity for additional affordable housing. And then I also want to make a comment regarding the sound. I am a McKinley resident as well. I live right on 6th Street. In my backyard, I can walk out my back door and I will see Upper Harbor. I'm going to hear Upper Harbor and everything else. But at the same time, I mean, I hear gunshots, okay? I'm not too concerned about sound of a concert that's going to end at 11 p.m., or something to that effect. I hear gunshots. I hear people's cars skirting because they don't want to wait at the light down the street. I hear people arguing outside, all of those types of things with pertaining to the venue. For me, my concern is parking and making sure that there's actable parking at the venue space. So me as a person on the other side of the river, I don't have my parking places taken up because someone didn't want to pay for parking at the venue, but that's neither here nor there. But at the same time, there's lots of other sounds, freeway sounds. I hear sirens, police sirens, all that good stuff. So as far as the sound, I think we should be fine in how it was presented and what I can remember way back when and how it's going to be built. It's going to be built low enough to where the sound is not going to interfere with everyday life around the Upper Harbor Terminal, because there's also residents that's going to live right on that same location, even closer than Mary and I. So I believe that you should be okay, but that's just my comment. Hi, good to see y'all. It's been a while.
Hey, Melissa.
Markel,
can I just say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the CPC, Brandon, thank you for dropping it in the chat. And I don't know if you want to speak or if you just want me to say what it is, but it is pointing out the motion that the CPC made for the height was to add more affordable housing. And the specific motion was that it's a motion to support advocating for a conditional use permit to exceed the heights currently in the shoreline overlay and critical area overlay district to accommodate additional affordable housing for parcels 1A, 1B, and 6A. So that was an official CPC motion that we supported to make sure that there was more affordable housing on those parcels. So just so that we're clear, if we start going back and forth arguing about this height thing, it's not, we've already talked about this. So thank you for finding that, Brandon.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Hillary.
You basically just said what I was going to, is that a conditional use permit to go over the 2.5 stories in the shoreland, which is that 300 feet from the river's edge, is required to get those buildings on 1A and 1B and 6A above the 2.5 stories. Otherwise, that is the height limitation. But yes, this committee did recommend a CUP, or that they did recommend that process be gone through to get that additional height, to get the additional density and the affordability and whatnot.
Exactly. And there's still a process that the developers have to go through anyways. It's not, like you said, it's not an official approval. It's just, they have a process to follow.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments on the AUAR? Any additional questions that we can figure out or try to find answers to right away? I just want to reiterate that there is an open house tomorrow, which will go in depth about this more. And so I would encourage both community and CPC members to tune into that if they're able. I will try to hop in myself, at least for a little while. But yeah, definitely check out the city website to get that info, because it could be very valuable in figuring out some more information on and diving deeper into this. Hillary has her hand up, and so does Mary. I'm going to let Mary go and ask her question real quick. Hillary Holmes.
I apologize. This is Tammy Skinaway. I just wanted to make sure that if they were ahead of me, because I'm on audio and I'm not able to have be on the computer right now, so I can't chat or raise my hand.
No, ma'am, it's only for CPC members right now. The agenda only has it for CPC business.
Okay, so we already went past the public questions?
There is no public comment on this agenda right now.
Okay, I'm not commenting. I want to ask the question, if I could, please.
Public comment or questions?
Question. As I said 2 times before, may I ask a question?
No, there is nothing.
Can we mute everybody so that we can stop having these interruptions so we can go ahead and have the meeting? Is there a way to do that?
Hi, this is Hillary again, committee staff for anybody calling in. Members of the public are calling in via audio. This is how the advisory boards and commissions are set up on the remote or online meetings. And so you can listen to the proceedings of the meeting, and there is, and this particular committee, no public hearing or public comment items on the agenda. There is an open house on the AUAR tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And so there is a Q&A portion as a part of that event or online meeting. And if you aren't able to watch that live, the recording of that event will also be posted on the project website. Again, that's upperharbormpls.com. And I also, since I'm talking, if it's okay, the reason I had raised my virtual hand was to note that if there are studies available, it looked like maybe Alexis had a question regarding noise studies. So I just wanted to note that reports and studies are on the project website as well, but it looks like someone had addressed that since it was an appendice of the draft AUAR. And so it looks like that is the place to go for that. The draft AUAR mitigation plan would have that as an appendice. So that's the one PDF document. And then just again, a reminder, I saw that this was already noted, but to keep any comments or substantive comments out of the chat, that's in violation of open meeting law, because those members of the public calling in can't see that. And so we just need to keep it to when you have a comment. And as always,
I found it very disrespectful, and I will be there tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
And so thank you for that. And what I was in the middle of saying was I appreciate you all. So thanks for your patience in this online meeting world.
All right. Thank you for that, Hillary. Mary, go ahead with your.
All right, this one's going to be really quick. It seems like most of the traffic studies centered on Dowling, and there's concern about traffic coming from the south and from the east. It's going to be a lot of traffic coming from those directions. So what's being mitigated there?
Hi, Mary. Thank you for the question. The traffic study looked at Washington and Dowling and also at 33rd and those access points. So we are doing a lot of improvements on 33rd as well. There's no sidewalks or bike lanes there. So we're putting those in with this project and providing a secondary access point. We are doing some preliminary improvements to the north and south of Washington to tie into additional bike facilities as well as the improvements we're doing on Dowling and to the. So,
Yeah, I'm talking about the east side, so Lowry, Northeast, Marshall Street, University Avenue. Right now, those are really heavily used streets, and people will be coming from those directions as well.
yeah, no, I hear you. There's, the transportation impacts to the network are large. And those areas are out of the scope for the improvements of this project. We are really financially constrained with even the improvements that we're doing right now to the Upper Harbor Terminal site, and we don't have additional funds allocated with this project to improve those. Those other areas will be improved through various reconstruction projects that are outlined in our CIP into the future.
All right, thank you for that. Melissa, is your hand newly up or do you have another question?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
thanks. This question for Brandon. Are you able to remind us what the number of floors and maybe apartments or living spaces, I should say, would be if the zoning of the building, the height was approved and not approved?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Or if it's already written on in the draft, what page would that be on, so other folks can go back and review it? Sorry.
I can answer it quick. The height that's proposed right now in 1A and 1B is 5 stories of housing, and we did look at what would stay under the limit, and it was basically a 2 or 3 story townhome. And so we went from basically in parcel 1B, we have 90 total units, and in parcel 1A, we have 78 total units, and that dropped down to, I think, 30 or 35 units per parcel. And they were townhomes. Like if you go south on the river, there's some of those townhomes. I think it's called the landings or whatever. That would basically be what we could do.
Table 11 in the AUAR, I don't have an exact page number, but there's a table in the land use section in the AUAR that talks about, talks about building height summary by parcel and zoning. And so it lays out what's being proposed and then what is allowed by the different sets of regulations. And so you can see how everything compares in that table.
Yeah, and I'm happy to. It was at the February, I don't remember the exact date, but when we did that design day workshop, that presentation shows the different levels, like as we're proposed right now, the townhome option, and I think we looked at 2 different kinds of homes.
It's February 22nd. I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
And for those calling in, that will be on the project website too, on the Collaborative Planning Committee page on the website. All the meeting materials from past meetings are on there. So if you scroll down, you'll find it.
February, you said 22nd, 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to, yeah, make sure. All right, do we have any other questions or comments? If not, we're gonna go ahead and thank Ms. Hillary for her presentation, and as well as Alexander, and move on to music venue ownership, because that is a very, there's some new developments there that we need to talk about. And so I want to make sure that we're giving time for that. So one last round of any other questions. And if not, thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
And thank you, Alexander.
Everybody, I have to get off. I have another meeting at church I have to run to.
Thank you, Ms. Vanessa.
It's good seeing everybody.
Bye, Ms. Vanessa.
God bless you. Bye-bye, darling. Hi, Britt. Bye, Britt.
This is Melissa. I have just one quick follow-up question about the zoning part. What is what goes into that, and as far as approvals of the city and not approval, I mean, what are the levels? Is it just they give a proposal and the city council reviews it and they agree or disagree, or is it, do they have to, somebody has to purchase their way in, or what, what does it take, to be able to move the zoning from what it's always been to something new?
Sure. So the site is currently zoned I2 and I3, which is medium and general industrial. And I2 is kind of in level of intensity, it's, medium and high intensity industrial uses are permitted currently on the site. So, looking at the draft coordinated plan and the proposed uses, but also looking at the Minneapolis 2040 plan and what the future land use map provides, or is planned for, we would base rezoning off of the 2040 future land use map. And so proposed zoning would move to, the future land use map for the site is, and I'm sorry, I should have bookmarked this page. There's production and processing on the, not production, processing. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Hillary, this is Hillary.
Yep.
I roll that you can't see. Are you looking at, sorry, are you referring to the draft AUAR document?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the table that shows all of our, so we would look at the future land use map in 2040 and then would need to determine future zoning classifications based on that. And then also looking at what's proposed on the site. And so there would be a mixture of I1, which is light industrial, and then commercial zoning on the site. Those are the commercial, or those are the zoning districts, excuse me, that would match the 2040 future land use plan and also the proposed uses for the site. So a project would, an applicant would need to apply for a rezoning. So it's a land use application that would be applied for through the city. It would be presented to the City Planning Commission. And for all rezoning applications, rezonings do have to be approved by the full city council because they're legislative actions. They change the zoning until it's proposed to be changed again forever. So it does take city council votes to change the zoning on the properties.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. With that, Hillary, I appreciate you for sticking around for that last question. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the music venue update. Ownership up. Thank you. Eric, you're up.
Good evening. Thank you so much. My time to shine here. My name is Eric Hansen. I'm the city's economic development director. I'm happy to be here and share some information. When we last met and talked about the draft coordinated plan, we talked about some restrictions the city has around state bond funded projects. We refer to that typically like the Guthrie Theater or the Cole Center or the Orchestra Hall, where if the city owns a facility, it is required then at that, with the rules of the state, we're required to then operate that facility for forever. And so we discussed at length in this committee about this model called the sandwich, where an entity would own the, if we go with the Guthrie model, the Guthrie owns the property. The Guthrie then turns over that theater to the city for the useful life plus 25% of the facility. The city controls it for that time, and then we lease it back, or we have an operator agreement with the Guthrie to operate the theater for us. And it's our requirement with the state. It's the requirement of the state for us to make sure that we deliver what is called a government program, and that would be to operate a theater. So in this case, we talked at length about not wanting to sell land. And so most of the development property, all the development property is going to be a marketable ground lease. Park Board will own the parks, and then the city will retain the public right of way. This was the only site we talked about selling. It's because of those bond interests. And in the sandwich model, after the useful life plus 25% of time, the state's interest just expires, and then the city is pulled out, and then it collapses. The two pieces of bread come together. It's not a very tasty sandwich, but it's the city's interest is out. So that's where we left it back in January, and that's what's in the draft coordinated plan. We've learned over the spring that the state has changed its rules around bond-funded projects, whereas they no longer require municipally owned structures or properties to be operated forever if there's bond funded. If there's bonds funding it, they only require us to operate it for that useful life plus 25% of time. So based on the conversations we've had with this committee, we want to present an option to you, because now there is a path where the city could own the music venue and have First Avenue operate it for the 62 and a half years, which is half is the useful
thing though.
Which is the useful life plus 25%. And that would, then make it so that none of the land at the Upper Harbor would be sold to private hands. The city would own, First Avenue would still, we would bring the bond award from the state. First Avenue would have to match that bond and construct the music venue, but then they would turn it over to the city of Minneapolis, and we would own the building, we would own the land, and we would still have to make sure it's operated for 62 and a half years. So we do what's called a marketable operating agreement or a lease. And so we would lease it to First Avenue for operations for about half that time. So just roughly over 30 years. And so this is an option before the CPC that would be different than what's in the draft coordinated plan. And the reason we're presenting it to you is because of the interest of keeping this land and these facilities owned in public hands. And this would be a way to accomplish that. The changes, all the ticket fees would be the same. The community benefits agreement would be the same about community programming. And you see in that really detailed memo, mostly written by Hillary, all the details, but there's a side-by-side comparison table. The one thing that does change is a community entity would not be partnering with a minority share of owning the land. So that's the change. So it would be held by the city, and in the future, in 30 years, it's possible there could be a second operator. In 60 years, it's possible there could be a conversation with all of our successors, and maybe there's a couple of you that are going to really keep around and be here in 62 and a half years to talk about it. But then there's time to talk about it. So the city is prepared to own the facility. We've talked to Dana about it. She is amenable to this if the CPC thinks that this is a direction you want to take. We'd be open to amending the draft plan to show that the city owns it. So with that, I'll stop and take any questions you might have.
Real quick, I apologize. It's hot in my office. I thought I said you. My bad. All right. Anyone? Melissa has her hand
up. Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Wow. That was that's a lot to take in right there. Because for starters, we were going to put the venue under a community benefits agreement, which out the gate, the city said they want no part of. So that is going to be an issue because the city wanted to not be a part of a community benefits agreement. But with ownership, I think you're kind of a little bit obligated to be a part of that and to come to terms with kind of, what the request of the community is. And so that seems a huge conflict of interest to me. I personally was fine with how it was set up with the lease agreements and for the 63.5 years. I mean, hell, we're doing land trusts for 99 years out here these days, and the city wants to own the land of people's homes. But that kind of disturbs me, because it's like, if you're going to lease it to Dana for 30 years, we might as well sell it to her right now and recoup some of that bond money right now. I mean, we're really talking, how many acres is it? It's really like what, 4 or 5 acres of just land in between all of this that the city owns. So that's my biggest thing, is the involvement, community benefits agreement that the city is going to play its part in, and to be for it to continue to be equitable for community.
Right. Melissa, that's a good point to bring up. And it's something that I wasn't clear in my initial comments. So thanks for the question, so we can clarify this. We would essentially lease this back. We would lease this to First Avenue, and we would enforce their operations of the facility for that 30 some years. They would continue to have. We were expecting that they would continue to take the ticket fee and have the community benefits agreement with the community. That would not change in this arrangement. And it wouldn't have to involve the city, because some of the things that go into those community benefits agreements, the city wouldn't be able to enforce, because it's a relationship between the operator and the community. And so we still wouldn't be party to the community benefits agreement, but it would not have any impact. This ownership option would not have any impact on those negotiations around a community benefit agreement.
Yeah,
it's just kind of weird,
we would
because
still.
Go ahead, Dana.
Oh, sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's just kind of weird, because it's kind of like in a situation where you think of, home ownership, the city would be the owner of the home, First Ave would be the renter, and I would be the neighbor, and I'm like, hey, my neighbor is not mowing her lawn and everything under the sun, and everything that happens with the person that's renting, it rolls up to the owner. So if the fulfillment of, the venue, which I'm not saying that there's any issues with Dana, because I totally feel that everything will be 100%, but it rolls back up to the owner, which is the city. So
So Melissa, that's another good point. And these are all everything with bonds is complicated. So I appreciate that we're having this conversation. In the draft coordinated plan, the city would basically take an ownership like control of the property for those, that useful life, those 62 odd years. So we'd be in a similar position. It's just the underlying land would be owned by a different entity. So for example, I use the Guthrie. We have to make sure the Guthrie operates until the end of that useful life. And I forget what the number is. It's something substantial. Like decades and decades and decades. And if the Guthrie Theater as an entity goes out of business, we still have to operate it. We still have to make sure that facility is open. So we have somewhat of an ownership stake there until the end. And then once that happens, then the owner, that owns that fee underneath the sandwich, then they would take over. So the city still has a pretty significant role as far as delivering it. But what we've done with cultural institutions in the city of Minneapolis, and honestly, this happens around the state, is we have a long-term operating agreement, and then we just make sure that it's maintaining the government program, and the operator then makes a lot of the decisions about, mowing the lawn, for example, to your analogy. I hope that answered your question.
Hillary, you have your hand up. Oh, go ahead, Dana.
Oh, hey, just really quick, I just wanted to say, if it's helpful, as always, if it's helpful, in the draft coordinated plan, on page 64 and 65 is titled mapping, sorry, bath time. Mapping proposed community benefits guide to future agreements, and that lays out all the community benefits because some will be contained in the CBA. Some are contained in city agreements, which includes the ground lease, the redevelopment agreements, the use or operating agreement is referred to as both with the CPAC. So if you want to check that out, there's a lot of things that remain in place that aren't changing around benefits. Thank you.
Courtney?
Hey, what's going on? So quick, as we think about kind of process. So basically you're bringing to the table, we have an opportunity to change the ownership structure. I imagine you'd want that decision to then be built into the plan. How should we be thinking about timing? Like, are you looking to have a decision tonight? I think a couple people have some questions. Just how do we think about when this needs to be approved and how it gets built in the larger approval process?
Thanks for that question, Courtney. So we would like to get your opinion, and we know we're bringing this to you now, and I believe you guys will have a discussion about another meeting in July. And so if you're comfortable with making a decision now today, then fine. If not, I think we could wait till July for you guys to contemplate what it would be. But we would like to make final recommendation in the final plan. So
to get an official motion from us as a group.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
Can I? Oh, I'm sorry. This is Hillary. I'm sorry to jump in, but Tanessa has a comment.
Oh, yep. Go ahead, Tanessa.
So my question is, I think it would be helpful to understand all the implications. It's hard to understand. I mean, it's a big decision, and it's hard to understand, the pros and cons. Is it possible for us for the city to put that together, so we don't have to, go through all that in this meeting or another meeting, to help us understand what the benefits of a city-owned venue versus a privately owned venue is, and what are the cons around that?
Yeah.
Right. Can I just point out real quick that, and this, Eric, this kind of helps, maybe you can tie all this together, is that if the city owns it, right, then that cuts out the community ownership that possibility. So that means a community entity wouldn't necessarily be able to own part of it. Instead, it would just be city owned. So like when we talk about pros and cons, yes, it's in public ownership. However, the community entity doesn't get a chance to own it.
So, and let me tie that together. So if we go with the First Avenue plus the community entity owning the property, for those 62.5 years, that ownership entity has no real authority on making decisions. It's the city that has the control because it's leased to the city, and then we give it to the operator. So the community benefits agreement and the community programming and the community entity that's working with that could work with First Avenue could still realize their influence through that operator agreement and relationship. But there's no sway for the owner during that useful life plus 25%. It's all the city that is required to be kind of the owner. So that's why we've talked about a community benefits agreement with First Avenue so that we can realize community benefits during the 62.5 years. And that's true. At 62.5 years and 1 day, in this current system, the city's interest would expire, and then it would collapse on itself, and then First Avenue would own more than half, and the community entity would own a little less than half, and then we can have then it would be a relationship between those two groups. Now, it's possible that we as a community can talk about who owns these things in 62 years. And it's possible at that time, maybe the perception has changed and people want to sell it, want the city to sell something. So you could get a community entity owning this but the control really does not come into play until you get to that 63rd year. So I just want to make sure that you understand that there's not, the ownership is real for our offspring, our great grandkids, I think. So that's where it comes in, and so that's the real difference. And then working with First Avenue and a community entity on the operation side, because they'll have to maintain it for about 30 years. And then we would go back in and try and find a second operator. Now that could still be First Avenue, but or it could be a different entity that would operate in 30 years, and then you could still see community benefits there. So I think that's it. I'm not trying to minimize the community ownership component, but I just want to make sure people realize that there's no ability to change things unless you're working on the operator side, the top piece of bread in the sandwich. If that's clear. And then one more thing. And to Nessa's point, we did write a lengthy memo that's describing this, the options and how it changes and what the community benefits are. So I, encourage, this is an evolving option. We just kind of found out about it. There was no official statement from the state of Minnesota. They just started sending us different contracts. So it was by happenstance that we learned about this. And we thought it was important that once we knew something, we would share this with the city or with the CPC so that you guys could opine on it.
Thank you, Eric. All right, I have Mary, Courtney, then Dana, and Hillary and Melissa. So let's start with Mary. We got a long line here. You're muted, Mary.
This is a very complicated issue, and we're just hearing about it. And I think we need time to discuss it with other professionals and the community. Even a month is going to be short, but I cannot imagine making a decision on this tonight. I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Thank you, Mary. Courtney?
Yeah, so Eric, I gotta push back a little bit here, because when I hear you say the words "a community entity" really isn't the I don't know if you want to rephrase it, because that idea that we specifically wanted a community entity to have a seat at the table, because there is reasons why you guys as a city didn't want to hold it forever. But the other bigger piece was the fact that we wanted a voice at the table to actually make sure things were being heard. And so even though I hear you saying that the city, in effect, no matter what scenario we go through, is going to be the ultimate decider, I have to imagine not having a community entity at the table, there's a strategic decision behind that piece, right? And so for me, that entity always played a role in the fact that it was a voice of the community. It was a way to make sure that programming and all the things that are in the community benefits agreement actually actualized. And so to hear it being referred to as something that doesn't necessarily have legs or have power, I just want to make sure that's really what we're saying here, because that would be a change of what I was always envisioning this plan to be.
Yeah. So Courtney, that's also, again, this is a very complicated deal. I agree with you, and I think that's always been the expectation, is there's a community entity at the table, and that's the nature of the community benefits agreement, and what's the community role working with First Avenue on the operations. It's not on the ownership side. So it's like, if you think about the sandwich model, where you have at the base, you have the ownership, and then the city's in the middle with the lease, and then we select an operator. That's where all the decisions are made around community benefits and, like procurement and events and, hiring practices and ticket fee uses and all those sort of things. And that's where the community's voice has really been, that's where the community can actually have an impact during that 62 and a half years. That was always expected, to your point. Yes, I think not saying to take away that community voice and that community seat at the table, and that's why I thought it was important that you guys are working on a community benefits agreement, so that you can articulate exactly what that role is. But until 63 years, it's up at the top end, not on the bottom end, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna kind of chew on what you just said here, Eric,
Sure.
because it's still be candidly with, like, I get the idea that you keep saying this is complex, and it is. Bonding is complex, but ownership and how the conversations we had, this just it's a switch from the city, and I get the why. You know, all of a sudden there's a change in bonding. I would be interested to know how long this change has been in effect and when you guys picked it up in the delay between the two. But candidly, man, I just don't like how the community entity now is being positioned in terms of authority making or influence or ability to direct. And it just seems, maybe I need to brush up on some stuff. It just seems like a change in tone, which I just have to call out because I'm hearing it.
Okay. I apologize if it seems like a change in tone. We as far as the timeline, one of our city attorneys noticed it in a new contract this middle of this spring. That's when we found out about it. When did they make the decision? Before that. When, I don't know, because again, they didn't announce it. They just started sending in different contracts, and we followed up with Minnesota Management and Budget and asked, have you changed your approach to this? Is the state changed its approach to what the requirements are? And they said yes. And we were like, okay, so we're going to bring this forward. So I don't mean it to be a change in tone. That's why I think it's important, and we can wait till next month and talk about it, and why we produced materials for you to review. But as soon as we knew about it, this is the first meeting of the CPC since we found out about it. We wanted to take it to you as soon as we found out. So it's an option. What I'm saying is an option. This is not a directive. This is an option. And just understanding that this group has talked about not selling any land, and this is a way to fulfill that thing. So if the CPC decides, if you look through the materials and you still think we should go with the sandwich model, let's talk about that.
All right, Dana.
Hey, thank you. From our perspective, certainly almost nothing would change from the land ownership change except the actual ownership of the land. There'd be no change in the community benefits, in the contracting goals, in the community entity, in their, oversight and their responsibilities, especially concerning the programming and being the recipient of the fees. Again, what we had heard both throughout the CPC and other community meetings is this desire to keep the land in public ownership. And so, from our perspective, that's what this change in law kind of allowed for, is to remain the land in public ownership. And as the operator, we would have, again, a limited operations agreement. And certainly our goal as the operator would be to build the capacity of a community entity to be able to take over the lease when our operating agreement expires. So, at least, from our perspective, it gives the community more control because it doesn't tie you or tie up. It leaves the land in public ownership, and with a finite kind of expiration period for when the First Avenue contract would expire.
Mm. That is a really that's a really good point. And I just want to say that I know that I've heard it time and time again that people want it to be public ownership. So Hillary.
I'll keep it brief. The memo that we've been referencing is in the meeting materials, and there is some reference to additional ownership. I realize that what we're talking about specifically here is land ownership, and of course, ownership related to the venue. If you're interested, however, in other ownership options that are still in the plan and still remain in the same proposal, I'm sorry, without words, but the things that are still remaining unchanged around ownership, because we've talked about different types of ownership, different ways people can own or feel or have ownership. We tried to summarize that in the memo as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa, and then Makeda. And then time check at 6:52. We are supposed to be done at 7. I know how we roll, but if we can try to keep as close to end time as possible, that would be great.
Amen. For sure. A couple of things. With the city owning, for one, can we get a document that reflects what we approved and what initially it was looking like to what these new potential projections would look like with this new proposal from the state and the changes in the law of the bonding. So we can kind of see it all side by side.
So you mean like an image document?
Or we could just pull up what we had, or just have something new that reflects the changes of the new changes, so we can just look at it together. Because I'm sure we already have something of what we already have done once before and what was approved as far as for the venue. The other thing is my concern is who's going to pay the taxes, or is this going to be exempt like the Target Center and the TCF building for taxes, to where the community is going to have to pay more taxes on it? And is this going to bring more jobs because the city's not going to be owning and basically taking care and operating the building on the outside? Is it going to bring more jobs for that? And is there going to be some clauses? Because one thing I hear is I always think of, okay, initially it was 63.5 years, and now you're talking 30 some years, but I know there's always a clause somewhere in there to be bought out or ex-nayed. Is there going to be something on that term? Or because you think of Kmart had 99 years, with the city, and we came in and they bulldozed that whole thing, and now the city owns the building again. Is that a potential for the venue as well? And kind of like what Courtney was saying, and I feel like the city and the community were going to be excluded from being at the table by some of these conversations, because in my eyes, anytime the city is involved in something, everything is so tight. It's so tight, and everybody's holding it like it's their own pocketbook, and there's no, when everything was initially supposed to be flowing and open-ended, it just kind of makes me a little bit nervous in those aspects, because now with the city owning it, everything, any changes you want to make needs to be reviewed and draft plans created and multiple meetings on it, and things of that nature, just to change a sign out front if you wanted to, or if and you think of big buildings like this, it's like who's gonna pay for the final ticket of it? As community members, you think of like US Bank Stadium, they've put all the billions of dollars over there. And it seems like every single year they're redoing the outside of the structure of those buildings and spending more and more and more money because it's falling apart already, So I'm just thinking outside the box and just trying to say, who's going to be the one in the end having to pay for this stuff.
All right.
And if the state is able to up and make these changes with these laws after different bonding bills and things have been passed, what's to come, in the near future in come months.
Right.
So let me answer that. Taxes, personal property taxes would be required by First Avenue because it's a for-profit entity. The city doesn't pay property taxes on its facilities, but that would be subject to personal property taxes. As far as who makes capital decisions, there will be a requirement. The city has to maintain and operate this facility for those 63 years. That's the requirement of the bonds. That's what will be in the bond agreement. So if rules change in the future, it will not apply to these, because that's the agreement we will have signed with the city, with the state of Minnesota. So we'll have to have that, and we will want to. Since we don't operate music venues, we will have a capital reserve requirement for improvements on, capital improvements, and we can make decisions, but it's really up to First Avenue to invest in the facility. So it's not like it's going to go to a tribunal of learned people to talk about what the signage. It's going to be basically First Avenue making sound business decisions to make sure that this continues to be a state-of-the-art facility, and it's to their benefit, it's to the community's benefit, it's to the city's benefit. So we don't really have a lot. We can make some suggestions, but typically when we see this with the other cultural institutions, they're already beating us to the punch. The only place that we've had a problem with is the Target Center. The Target Center is owned by the city, and it wasn't bond funded, but we used our own bonds to buy it in the 90s. And now when we make changes to that, it's very complicated. And so that's the one kind of outlier. In fact, we had to do conversions of how bonds are dealt with, whether they're taxable and non-taxable, and what improvements you could make. So it's really, that's kind of the exception to the rule of these facilities. And then when we get into like fire stations and police precincts and public works facilities, those have some requirements as well. And, we maintain those in a city way. I would say that to them. But this music venue, the cultural institutions, we see those improved on a regular basis. And I'm pretty sure that the US Bank Stadium issue is a insurance issue. There was a defect on the outside. So I'm expecting that the insurance proceeds are paying for that, but I'm not in the weeds on that one. I think I got all your questions, Melissa, or did I miss one?
Yeah, no, you did. It just makes me nervous to have another venue that's on Northside land that, basically this is the only venue that we're going to have any part of, because we don't get anything from TCF or the Target Center, and those are also on Northside land.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point about who's working there, and when you make decisions about vendors and that sort of thing. And I think that's the commitment I've heard from First Avenue and Dana about, she's raising the money to build the facility and willing to enter into agreement with community around benefits that can come out of it, including who works there and who benefits from, the economic spend from that. And that is not going to change.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, again, and I think according to your question or point, nothing changes from the power capacity of the community entity, except that land ownership. And, honestly, what we keep hearing is like land ownership should stay in the public domain. And so, again, from our perspective, it's getting closer to what we've been hearing in public meetings. And none of all the programming, the ticket fee, the vendor, the career pathways, youth development, none of that changes at all.
For sure. It just seems weird on the outside looking in, because at the beginning, the city was like, no, we want no part of it. Yes, even we will own the land. Dana, you're in charge of everything, from top to bottom to the landscaping aspects. We don't want to even be dealing with the maintenance and the upkeep. Now, all of a sudden, they're all hands on deck. It's like somebody alerted them, hey, this is a idea and a money pot, a possibility to, build and grow from. And we're gonna have Dana come up in here, and then we're gonna give her the boot like we did Kmart, in 10 years and get some new people,
All right,
Melissa, I just want to say, we still don't want to make any of those decisions. We just want the venue to be operated by First Avenue and in collaboration with community benefits. We have no interest in doing that. It's just, to Dana's point, it's just the land is owned by the city, but everything else we're expecting the operator to do all that work and to, fund, community benefits. We're not looking at this as a money grab.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, that was always the projection with the 63.5 years, that it was going to be in that way with the lease agreement and additional money coming back to programming.
Sorry, it's 7:01.
Sure.
We get these other questions asked and answered, and then hopefully tie this up, please. Thank you. Makeda.
I just would like to make a motion that we table the decision until later, but that we get information on all the questions that were raised tonight to the committee members before that July meeting to help us, because we don't develop. I'm not a developer, so understanding the impacts is going to take me a little bit longer. And so to give us all a chance to kind of go through that within a good amount of time, I'd like us to table I move that we table the decision until July at the soonest.
A second.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as materials, Makeda, if I may, read the materials that Hillary provided. There's a memorandum and a couple of graphics to look at. And what I would say is we think that has most of the information. feel free to email Hillary or myself if you have questions to clarify so we can make sure that we made it, but we think that it should address the questions we've heard today.
Thank you. Do we need an actual vote for this motion? We do have a motion on the table in a second. Dana
We
has
can,
her up and
we can run through roll call really quick just to make sure, and then it will make sure it's, of course, it's going to be on the agenda for next meeting. So if that's cool, I'll just go now. Melissa Newman.
Aye.
Thank you. Markella Smith.
Aye.
Mary Jammin McGuire.
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Aye.
Thank you. Brett Howell.
Aye.
Thank you. Grace Rude.
Aye.
Janessa Green.
Aye.
Makeda Zulu Gillespie.
Aye.
Jason Eisen. Alexis Penny.
I abstain.
Thank you. Courtney Schroeder.
Aye.
Thanks. That's 8 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstention. So we'll table this until our next meeting to be discussed. Thanks.
Awesome. What I would say is, please, I encourage everyone, if you still have questions that have not been answered about this, to email Hillary, the development team, so that they can get you more information if it hasn't already been sent out. Dana has her hand up, and we're moving on to development team update. So I don't know if Dana, you want to go ahead as we transition, or if you didn't have your hand up anymore and I just missed the.
No, I think I was put it up responding to an earlier point of this is really similar to the arrangement at the Palace Theater in downtown St. Paul, where the city owns the building and the land, and we have an operating agreement. We pay every single dollar we pay into a capital expenditure. As far as I know, the city has not, since we took over the operations, again, we've paid every single dollar of expense, and we paid the city rent, and the city hasn't, it hasn't paid a dollar into any kind of maintenance or capital improvement. So just wanted to put it out there that, we have experience with these types of arrangements and agreements and maintaining our responsibilities and paying for all the capital improvements. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. All right, Brandon.
Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't really planning to give a huge speech or anything here, other than to just reiterate a couple of the main points that were in the memo, and then leave it open to Q&A on any of these points or on our progress. And we do have obviously Dana on and Devin as well to answer questions on this. But I'm referring back to the memo that we submitted last week, and I'll just touch on a couple of kind of key items here, and then like I said, leave it to Q&A. So we are making slower progress, I think, than what we hoped at this point, but we are making progress on the community benefits term sheet, and Markell and I have been talking about this over the last couple of weeks, and are intending to bring this up with their executive board here in June. I think June 21st. Is that right, Markella, is the presentation?
Yep.
And so she does have her executive committee reviewing the term sheet and providing comments, and I think we'll start to make some serious progress on that here over the next couple of weeks. And then the community entity expression of interest, we might have called this an RFQ or an RFP back in January or prior to that, but we changed it to more of an expression of interest, and that was based on some of the feedback that I was getting from people in the community, that there may be a lot of community organizations that have interest in the project but don't exactly understand all the different ways that they could get involved. And so rather than a formal RFQ or RFP, which sounds very formal and typically means, submitting 30 or 50-page responses, we changed it to just an expression of interest. And that document went public on June 2nd. It's I think there's a live banner on the Upper Harbor website right now that people can click on it, and we will be starting a proactive messaging campaign here on this expression of interest, because we want to make sure that it reaches as many organizations and people as possible. And so I would encourage anybody, if you know of a group or have interest in other ways of trying to stay involved, to respond to that. And then we are working with, so I'll shift over now to our kind of engagement plan here over the next few months. So we are working with James Trice and his team on our future engagement plan starting here this summer. And we're hoping to get an event in July. We had a discussion with the design team yesterday at maybe early August. But we intend to have a series of meetings, some related to the projects themselves, the phase 1 projects, because if for us to kind of stay on schedule with where the city is at and with what we need for funding and financing, especially with the affordable housing, we do need to start design soon. And so we don't want to get too ahead of the community on that. So we're hoping to have a few design workshops here starting this summer. We are also convening a group of task force, or a number of task force groups that will be focused on some of the community value topics. And we're focused primarily on environmental justice and sustainability first, and economic inclusion, jobs and careers, because those are on accelerated timelines. We do have to make decisions. Again, going somewhat back to design, we'll have to make decisions on different sustainability items that will be going into the projects faster than some of these other things. And then once the community entity is selected, or community entities are selected, we're planning to create another task force around the community ownership and wealth creation, and then the disrupting gentrification and displacement as well. So we didn't want to start those till we had the community partners on board, because we feel like their input will be important to how we craft all the final strategies related to that. And so I touched a little bit on, some of these decisions with, design of, like, again, the affordable housing and whatnot. I mean, affordable housing takes nearly 2 years just to get financed, and you have to start applications 2 years in advance. We've already submitted a pre-application to start that process, to start that discussion with some funders. And so naturally they're asking, like, well, what is the project going to cost and what is it going to look like? And so we have to advance some of those discussions now as it relates to design and finance. And so, and I know Dana is and has pulled together a team to help with that. And then similarly on parcel 5, the business park, or the manufacturing parcel, we're just starting to advance the design a little bit there as well, so we can update our budgets and everything. And then I did want to touch, and I know Devin is on here, and we want to just provide a little more context on parcel 6B, the community health and wellness hub, because we always anticipated this to be a phase 2 project. But Devin has made some significant progress with some interested parties on this, and is in talks with other groups. And so, this I don't want to say this is going to be a phase 1 project yet, but we're certainly encouraged by some of these early discussions, and hope, that this is something that we'll be able to advance faster maybe than what we anticipated. And Devin, I don't know if you want to add any more context to that.
Yeah, well, first, I'll be really quick, but, if anyone wants to know about the Community Hub, what I've been working on is really pulling together a bunch of partners that have been doing community work similar to, what I've been doing, and can clearly demonstrate community benefits, helping youth, families, seniors that are in the community. And so I've identified kind of 4 major players that really are kind of like the glue of everything going on, along with my organization Building Blocks. But I have about maybe 5 to 10 other smaller organizations that we'll address later at the time. But I really want to throw a few names out to you guys. I'm sure if you guys aren't familiar, you guys may want to do some research but hear about them. But these are organizations that have been working in our community. And when one is the YMCA, and after meeting with them, they have some initiatives and some things that they really want to take to the next level. And they wanted a partnership with me on some other projects. And I said, well, here's the perfect project to kind of expand the things that you've been doing. And I chose these partners really to be the first phase of partners because of their track record and how long they've been doing it. Because one of the things that people get into of like, what have you proven? What have you been doing? You know, what model do you have? What evidence do we have of what you've been doing in the past? And so, and then two, also there's a financial component too that they can come to the table with and help with some finances too. And so them having that on their resume is the YMCA, excuse me. The second is Intercity Tennis. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but they have a program. Okay, good, Melissa. They have a program where they have a pay to play. They have some memberships and they capture some of the, I think it's an older clientele that they have some memberships and dues that they play tennis, and they have access to tennis courts, but they take the revenue from those and they fund programs for our youth. And then the main, the reason why they want to expand more into North Minneapolis is because a lot of the kids that they were serving were from North Minneapolis, having a hard time getting over south to Powder Home Park. So they wanted to kind of get into this. And so when they were recommended, people were telling them, hey, why don't you contact Devin? Because there's a basketball component that they want to add into their programming space. And then also they know that I want to work with kids and youth in North Minneapolis. And so we began to talk, and it kind of fits very well with who they're trying to serve. We're serving the same people. And so that's another component. And then there's North Point. They're the third partner, which they have a element of need where they have a sports medicine arm, which is not really being met because they have people getting services and, older people that have surgeries that don't have place for rehab. And they have 2 doctors that they're sending out for people to do their rehab. So I want to have their sports medicine arm, sort of say, in the close proximity of some of the people that are getting their surgeries done, because most people understand is the 2-hour surgery is great, but the rehab and what you do afterwards and what you keep is very necessary. So we want to have that in there. My nonprofit obviously will be there running the after-school programs. I have other players nationwide that want to come in and be a part of this program. I've gotten an overwhelming number of people that just want to come and be a part of it, from professional football players to professional basketball players, to make this thing happen, whatever it takes to get done. And then there's some other smaller AAU teams and organizations that will come in and we want to work with in volleyball and whatnot. But I wanted to kind of introduce those guys to you, and then kind of go back and really dig deeper into, so the next time we talk, I can say, hey, I sat down with the partners, the community knows who you guys are. They did some research. They know you guys have been in the community working, and then give you guys like a week, what a week would look like. So you can see, hey, when the kids are in school, this and this is going to be happening. There'll be some older people in the community getting rehab, working with North Point. There'll be older people and their clientele playing tennis. There'll be personal training and boot camps going on for people trying to lose weight and do all this other stuff. And then at 3 o'clock, kids come in. Then we have a whole separate services for after school programs and other programs that would happen. So just to kind of give you guys like what a week looks like, what a day looks like, and then in summertime, what kind of programs would go on in this building. And then 2, both of these organizations love this project as well because they want to expand on what they're doing. The Y has so many different programs that they want to really get into. This project allows them to get into those areas. And one of the big things that really caught my attention is they have a really big a job creation and job training initiative that they want to really take advantage of in this development, in this hub as well. So all of those organizations, not only do they have the credibility, they've been around for a long time, they have the track record, and they have financing that they can bring to the project, because this is going to be a beautiful building. It's going to cost a lot of money. So we're going to need a bunch of players that come in. And then also that would help the numerous smaller nonprofits and people that want to be a part of the development that I can bring on, that they can use the space and add on and have some of their programs as well. But those are the main ones that were really, building blocks, inner city tennis, the YMCA, North Point. Those are the people that would kind of come in with some financing to really be the meat and potatoes of the project, where we can have everybody else kind of come in. So that's kind of an overview. So next time I would like to just have, hey, here's what a week looked like, committee. Here's what a summer would look like. From these times to this time, this what would be going on. Here's who we're serving. Here's the people that we're trying to get to. That's my goal for this.
So you would have that for July, possibly?
I could, yeah. After tonight, I plan on going back to those other partners and say, hey, here's what you guys want to do. Let me get a schedule, and let's have the next meeting, so I can give them a walkthrough so that they can see what a week looks like in this hub, so that they can, have questions, comments, and suggestions too, because we have a blank canvas, sort of say right now. The building's not built yet, so we have a kind of a blank canvas, but we want to get those. We want to get that out to you guys as soon as possible.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Time check, 7:18. My office is hot. I'm trying to get out of my office. All right, so it's 7:18.
Someone get this woman a fan.
I do have a fan. My son brought me a fan, and it's still not enough. It's burning up back here. I'm glistening. Can't you see? No, I'm just playing. Anyways, so do we have anything else for a development update? If not, then we're gonna go to the city update. Or are there any questions? Mary has her hand up real quick. Oh, you're muted.
Yep. I'd like to make a motion when it's appropriate.
I mean,
to the AUAR discussion.
You have the floor, Mary. Go right ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we support an extension of the comment period for at least another month.
Alexis Penny, second.
Do we need to have any discussion as a group?
What's the motion?
That we support an extension of the comment period for, I think right now it's 29 days, for at least another month, so we can have opportunities for the community to discuss and give feedback.
Got it.
Can I make an addition to that? Can we just make the community comment open-ended? Just allow it to be open-ended.
No.
No,
because I mean,
Can I?
What?
Can I?
The city's going to vote on it.
I mean, regardless if they vote on it, allow it to be an opportunity for community, or let it be a particular place where community members can always make comments regarding Upper Harbor Terminal, and somebody's able to review it.
Well, you can always give your comments, but for this process, it's an official process leading to a vote, and I think it needs more time.
Agreed.
I mean, and because that's just it too, because some community members feel like they need time. Some community members feel like they don't need time. And if they did make a comment, some people feel like their voices are heard and some are not. So it's like, we can't satisfy everybody. So even if we put an extension in, or we leave things as such, if you just leave it open-ended and have a particular place where community can always comment, there will never be a discussion of closing out community.
So I'm going to give a little bit of pushback. Eric, I see that your hand is up. I think what's different about this public comment period, I get the extra time getting it in front of community. But from what was presented, it sounds like they actually answer all of these comments. Like they actually come back with information regarding everyone's comment. So I feel like it's a little different than the previous public comment period, right? Like where it was kind of just open-ended. So I think that's my pushback is, yes, I get it, but we also can't just extend everything forever.
I'm talking about 1 month. This is a very complicated project, and there's one meeting I know about tomorrow. Personally, I'm working. I can't go. I have to work tomorrow night. So if I was a community member, how am I going to ask questions? How am I going to get the information and then give a comment? So if we can have some community meetings in our neighborhoods or discuss with our neighbors, This is a really quick turnaround.
Well, and there's still time to do that. You just got to put in the work.
There's not enough time. Less than a month
It's 2
from beginning
weeks.
to end.
It starts tomorrow until what, the 24th or the
It doesn't start tomorrow. I'm sorry for jumping in. This is Hillary Holmes. The comment period started on May 25th and it goes until June 24th. And the 30 days is standard, is what is required from the state, as I understand it. And I believe there could be, it's not 30 days, sorry, like an extension could not be as much as 30 days. But I will not speak to it anymore because this is outside of my realm of knowledge.
Eric, I'm sorry. I know your hand is up. Maybe you can speak to that.
Let me unmute here. So I believe the extension is a government unit would have to ask for the extension, and I believe they can do it for 15 days. To the point of add an extension and for public comment, there could be impacts on the overall timeline, and in a way where we bump up against funding deadlines. And the challenge that I would have is this committee of all committees has been aware of the AUR schedule. So, you know, that's there is a 30-day period for this this environmental review. So I'm not sure. You could request it. We'd have to. We've had another group request it. We've said not. We weren't going to extend it, so that's what we've said so far.
I'm sorry, how does this actually encourage people to participate in any of this process when you give them 14 days to give you a response to something to June 24th? How does this encourage people that are regular people on the ground that may know nothing about this project, have no background information, have not participated in this project for the last however many years, and talked about this project for however many years? That's fantastic for us. What about regular people on the ground? How does that impact them?
Yeah, so I'd say that AUAR process actually started a few months ago, and it didn't start just today. So
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
Anything until recently. You can have the process, but it was a secret. We had no information until recently. And neighborhoods meet once a month. So to get into that once a month cycle, even in 6 weeks, is very difficult.
You guys know you were fully aware about the AUAR thing.
Fully
They were supposed to vote on it
Exactly.
way back
We
when.
were fully aware.
They were
The
supposed to vote on it way
Everybody's
back
been fully
when.
aware.
Right. This is
information until
just
recently.
another tactic and a ploy to attempt and put more delay on development. That's all that it is.
That's unfair.
It's called accountability,
That's
Melissa.
unfair.
It's called
Called
accountability.
community
Okay,
involvement.
but people also have to take personal accountability. And if they've been following the project for this long, you best believe that they're following the AUAR as well. So, I mean, come on now. I get having enough time, but if this has been out since May 25th, and now we have 2 more weeks to push it, that's time. You just have to be willing to put in the work.
Call the question.
I'm going to do point of order, and I'm going to say, let's take this vote because there is a motion and a second. And Ms. Makeda, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you just did what I was asking. I just said call the question.
Thank you. Grace has a quick question. I'm sorry, Grace.
It's okay. It's just super quick and not about opinions. Was there an earlier comment period regarding AUAR stuff? Am I remembering that correctly?
It started May 25th.
No, like a previous one before that. Joanna is nodding her head.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a scoping. There was a public comment period for the scoping of the AUR at the beginning.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So there's been time, and people have had plenty of opportunity to give comment, give feedback. Hillary had her hand up, but I don't know if that was just to call the roll.
That was just to answer Grace's question. Thanks.
Okay.
It was answered.
Got you. Let's take a vote, please, and thank you. It is 7:27. I love y'all. It's been real.
What are we voting? What are we voting on?
So there is a motion on the table. Can someone else reread that, or can you restate it, Mary? To extend the public comment period by 30 days, I believe.
And
I
will
wrote down,
revise that to
Oh.
15 if that's the limit.
I mean, so which one is it? Because this is. Is she still here?
it
Sorry, it
says she
looks
has
like
no
she-
longer
The
access to chat.
maximum extension is 15 days.
Okay, so I'm assuming then the motion would be, and I'm not, that it would be to extend it for 15 days. That is the motion. Is that correct?
Alexis, are you gonna, what I have in the
can-
notes is that Mary made a motion for 30 days and Alexis seconded. So do we want to, that's what I have written.
That's fine. Yeah, I know. I don't think Mary understood that there was any limitation or, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can stick with the original motion. Because
Hold
she's
on,
not-
hold on. That's not fair to what she just said before she got off the phone.
What did she say when she got off the phone?
15.
Okay, so that's what I just said. Are we changing the motion so that it says 15 and no one answered me?
Sorry,
So I'm
I just,
asking again, is the motion that we extend this public comment
Yes,
for
Markella, it's
15 days?
15. That's the
Okay,
motion.
do we still have a second?
yes, please.
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
We get a roll call.
Yes, this is Hillary. Sorry, someone's trying to get in the meeting.
I just
Mary,
added
she's
Mary.
coming back. Okay. Sorry, Mary, I was calling you. Disregard.
Oh, sorry, my computer died.
Hey,
I
it
vote aye.
happens. It happens every day. Okay, so we've got roll call for the motion. Mary, did you need the motion restated? I'll just maybe summarize, sorry, to help us move along. It was taking your amendment of 15 days for the extension of the comment period. So roll call would be Melissa Newman,
Nay.
Markella Smith,
Nay.
Mary Jammin McGuire,
Aye.
Britt Howell,
Nay.
Grace Rude,
Nay.
Tanessa Green.
Abstain.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Abstain.
Okay, thanks. Makeda Zulu Gillespie,
Nay.
Jason Eisen. I think you may have left. Alexis Penny
Aye.
and Courtney Schroeder.
Nay.
All right, I have 2 in favor, 6 opposed, and 1 abstention. So that it does not carry. Thank you.
Do we have the quick city update?
I'll just say one thing. Thank you for the time. Thank you for being hot. The city's attorneys has the contract in place and work is underway with Michael Falangala and James Hall, who are private civil rights attorneys that are looking into legally defensible ways to preference American descendants of slavery. And so that work is underway this summer. We should have reports out from them later this summer. And then I can talk about all the rest of the other research that we're negotiating with the University of Minnesota. That'll happen after that at the next meeting. But I just wanted you to know that they're under contract and underway.
Thank you, Eric. I know the last thing that may not be necessarily on the agenda, but we're having a meeting in July. I believe that's the general consensus. Do we need anything from the CPC members to make that record or anything?
This is Hillary. I would just note that it would be the second Wednesday, so sticking with second Wednesday, 5 p.m., which would be July 14th. So I will send out a calendar hold and the materials closer to the date.
You said July 14th, right?
Correct, July 14th, 5 p.m., Wednesday.
Thank you.
We would still be online. we're not shifting away from that for the city's advisory committees yet.
Awesome. Thank you. With that, that does conclude our agenda. I again stress that if any questions did not get answered, or if you need more clarification, especially surrounding the AUAR, that you reach out to Hillary, the development team, Miss Joanna. I don't want to put more on your plate, but hey, you can always have the answers. Yeah, so just do that, please, and let's continue this discussion. Let's not wait like till July 14th to have conversations outside of this venue. We should be keeping conversations going within the next month. So I will.
As long as it's under quorum, I'm
under quorum,
obligated to say this.
I don't need
Got
20
it.
No, I'm just playing. All right, y'all. We're closing 7:33. Thank y'all for hanging out and for getting business done. Oh, what time is the open house tomorrow? Sorry.
Open house, 6 p.m. Look on the city's website at the event calendar, also on the project website, upperharbormpls.com. Sorry for saying that really loud or fast. There's a Gov delivery that went out, a couple of them that went out, and I'll just send another blast to you all if that's okay, if you don't mind, another email from me with the info. So that's a live event, so different than advisory committees. So it'll be more interactive, I'll say, because there's the Q&A component to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
It was nice to see everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
job.
Bye.
Nice job. Thank you.
See you, Madam Chair.